home, and uh, he found his bags packed in the hallway of his house, and his parents just dropped him off at a foster home. He was 7 years old. He never knew why. Never saw him again, and he just they sexually abused him in the foster home. Then he went into the military and had that. And he was just he's now in his 50s, and he was just he was just sharing about how it was horrible because someone asked him why he was so irritable and mad all the time, and he said he just is having trouble coping with where life's got him at this stage. And so I'm thinking if I start the Phoenix Collective just for that one man, and it's a good use of time and life. And I hope I can affect thousands of people like that. But you look at return on investment on things, and what really is return on investment? People make it out to be a dollar issue. I don't know. I just kind of think it's a soul issue. Like, what's money? Money is provision for the vision. And
Oh,
anyway, I
that's
just
powerful. I didn't even think about that way. It's right. It's a tool to be able to do so many things and
yeah,
to be able to have an abundance of it, to be able to do bigger things with it.
that last scene in Schindler's List where he goes when someone offers him something, he goes, "I've got this pin, I've got this pen, or whatever it is. This is one more child." And I think of the same thing. Like we are so blessed. We even sitting in the houses we have. We met at the conference. We're in the top 5%, 1% of the world in terms of our income and our lifestyle. And I think it behooves us to do something with that. Like I just can't believe we're destined to walk this world selfishly consuming. And I've got no problem with consumption. Like I like toys, I like things, I like that, but just at some point there has to be an overarching reason for our very existence or why.
Have
Why?
have you ever thought about the people that have been through such, I mean, everybody has like some sort of trauma in their life. And what I've noticed by being involved with sex trafficking causes or anti sex trafficking causes is that some of these individuals who've gone through such a deep trauma for so long, there's this deeper spiritual awakening if they choose.
If they choose. There seems to be two paths. Either the choice for victimhood, where
Yeah.
everything evolves around what happened. And look, I understand that. Or there's those of us who scrape the shit of our life together and decide it's going to be fertilizer. And if you grow anything that's any good, if you grow anything, that anything is going to end up bearing fruit. And fruit is something that everybody can consume. And I think that's how you tell where someone is in their journey is how are you turning that shit into fertilizer? How is the refuge of your past not only benefiting yourself but benefiting the rest of the world? And I think people who have always found it easy find that a very difficult concept, and they either become narcissistic in their consumption of relationship, consumption of emotions, consumption of thought, consumption of money. It's all about what they can feed off this, as opposed to, here's the garden of my life. I just want you to have some of this garden.
Well, I'm excited for
Yeah.
you to share your story. Thank you for being here. So we're going to jump right in. I love the organic conversation just to lead into it. But for all those who are going to be watching, I met Dr. John King at a conference around um, health and wellness, lots of doctors innovating, being awarded. I really don't even actually know what took you there, to be honest with you. But I'm super thankful. What was interesting about that week for me before I had run into you is I had had a few things on my mind about where I was in my own personal healing journey. Um, praying to my God about whoever I'm supposed to meet that I hope that I can empower and give back to, and just to put me in the right place at the right time. And so I thought it was really super synchronistic, our conversation. So welcome to the Let's Go podcast today. And
Thank you.
I think where the best place to start is the beginning of your story. Um, you've written a book, you've got a foundation you're working on, and you're building a community to invite people to their healing in their own way from the things they've suffered from. And through that, you have overcome your own challenges. And so at 4 years old, let's start with your story.
Sure. So my first act, my first sexual act was at 4. I had oral sex with a woman that raised me, and it was one of those situations where either I was going to engage in this act or my little sister was going to be subject to it. So I made a choice, and it's funny. One of those innate choices I think men are designed to make is, we're either protectors or predators. That's just the nature of how we're made, and we swap between those roles. You fuck with me and mine, then I become the predator in your life. And I think so. We constantly are making those choices, and I think very early I made the decision I was going to protect my little sister, and I
Right.
did that for the following 12 years and protected her for everything until I got too big for them to do anything anymore. So they used me for sex. They took me to parties. I was trained at sex very young, and apparently I was very good at it. And the woman who raised me would take me to parties with her friends. They made movies and a range of other things. So I had recall of those things. I suppressed all of that until I was 45. And
So,
often
but
that's
at 4 years old, did you realize what was going on in any kind of faucet?
no, no. It was a game to remove bread and water from her vagina with my mouth. It was a game.
Wow.
So it was just a thing you did because you were told to do it, and that
You
was how.
don't didn't know any different. You wouldn't have known any
Oh, that
different.
was my whole life. Like,
Right.
you,
When did you finally come out of being trafficked?
I was 16. I just didn't want to do this stuff anymore. I didn't have anybody else telling me it was wrong. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to be around, your head between the thighs of some fat 300-pound woman in a caftan. It was just like I didn't want to do that crap anymore, man. Fuck that. That smells. It was literally like that. I don't want to do this shit, man. And it was like I was too big for them to make me anymore. And
You got to take your power back, is what it sounds like. It finally at a point where,
yeah, I don't know, Bonnie. Like, we say things like that, and I understand what people are trying to say,
yeah,
but I just didn't want to fucking do it anymore. It's like I don't want this. I don't know what I want, and I don't know why I don't want it because that's all I've ever known. It's just I don't, and I'm too big for you to make me do that anymore. Um, and so I suppose in a sense I was taking my power back, but I didn't recognize it as that at the stage. I wasn't articulate. I was just a mess.
so the aha moment, you're going through life, you come out of the situation and you start to evolve. When did that aha moment come for you when you realized the im- those things from the ages of even as early as being born all the way up to 16, as you said, were what was impacting your life at, I believe you said 40,
Yeah, I was 45. It was a
45?
Wednesday, or Thursday. It was a Thursday, spring. And when I was young, I'd walk to school every day, and most days, and there was one uh, there was one house, and they'd planted daffodils out the front, and I counted my years by the number of times I saw daffodils. Because if I made it through a year and I saw daffodils, it was like I made another year. I'd made another year. And I would wait all years for those daffodils, and it would be a very sad time when the daffodils disappeared. And I'd had a love for daffodils, and I planted some daffodils. I was in Texas. I'd moved over here. I was in Texas, and I had a shed, a riding shed, and I had some daffodils. I planted some, and it was a beautiful day. I remember walking off the deck of my shed, stepping over these daffodils, and thinking, this is the most beautiful day, and they're the most beautiful daffodils I've ever seen. And it all came back like a flood. Up until that point, I had like little frames, like little old 8 millimeter frames that were little
Mm-hmm.
snapshots of my life of these things that I did with adults when I was a child or things that were done to me. And at that point, they all came together like a movie. And that was the first time that I realized that I had been sexually abused. And I know that sounds strange for people. They don't quite understand that concept, but that was just my life. It was my childhood. And growing up, I thought, did I think that everybody had experienced that? I don't know if that's a factual statement, but that's an emotional statement. I think I think that I thought there's a thing, isn't it? I I just assumed that was what childhood was. I didn't have any other reference other than my own experience. And I think when we go through these things as humans, we don't have external references to those things that are most close to us and intimate. We don't have an external reference to judge whether or not that's acceptable, normal, or how that fits into the human experience. So I'm having these things, and then at 45, it was like based on now 30 odd years worth of living differently, experiencing differently, thinking that's not how this shit's supposed to go down. That doesn't happen like this. That's not normal.
So
And
with other children or your friends or people around you, was it something that like you just didn't talk about?
not yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. There's inherent shame with it.
yeah.
I did run away when I was 7. I ran out. I hid in the bushes out the front, and I ran to the lady's place next door. And she beat me and dragged me back by the ear, saying, "Mothers don't do that to their sons. Stop lying." And that was the last time I ever told anybody
Because you
till
were
I was
put to
45.
shame.
Yeah. And I was
Wow.
like, okay, obviously mothers don't do that. I paid for that experience, physically and emotionally when I got returned. And I learnt two things. You can't talk about it, and you can't talk about it to women because their instant assumption is I was lying because I was a boy, because mothers are better, women are nicer people. And the woman that raised me was a very staunch feminist, and I would be trafficked out and sexually abused by her professors at the university. So pretty much all of my abusers were female. So you get this sort of, that's just how this goes. And they were very hateful of men. And and so you're in this environment where as a young man you're constantly being degraded and put down. Women are being elevated, and they're just being used as an entire sexual practice, and it's incredibly detrimental to your psyche as a young man growing up.
What is when you're feeling that shame and guilt and you have that realization that all of this has just happened to you, did you look at your life and think, oh, that's where my anger came from, or that's why I'm maybe self-sabotage, or maybe that's why, like, was it an emotional disconnect for you throughout your life?
Um, that's a really good question. I don't think I was that smart. I I went from flying 150 air miles a year, speaking and preaching in some of the biggest organisations, for profit and non-profit. Um, I had a very small boutique corporate coaching and training agency where I had two or three clients and made probably $750,000 doing corporate coaching. And
So you were
you
really
know,
successful
I
actually
was
in your
I
career.
was exceptionally successful.
And in that career, do you feel like because of that experiences, it fueled that success because you were suppressing it?
I think it fueled my need to be accepted and to perform. Like Harvard, if they accept young boys into the MBA program, one of their criteria is they come from broken homes because they get in there and they overperform because they're wanting approval, and they're very successful and very good at it. By the time they're 45, early 50s, they're totally burnt out.
Wow.
So I went into this whole thing, and what happened at 45 when I had recall, everything broke. So I went in from this world traveler to a chronic stutter. I couldn't leave the house where I was. I couldn't have my children go out for my presence, which was very difficult. The person I was married to at the time felt that this was definitely not God's will for her life, and her advice was, that I'd never get better, so suicide was a good option for the family. And like I would sometimes follow her to the supermarket and sit crying in my car to make sure that she was safe. So her point of view is she was being, I understand it from the point of view. I went from John 1.0 to John 2.0, and it's a very stressful thing for anybody to be involved in that, to see someone that they know just totally collapsed and not be there anymore. Because that's what happened when the recall came back. I just went from left brain to right brain. I went, total shift. Um, so there was a total collapse of all of that. And only at that point did I start to unpack some of the things as a matter of survival over the next, and it's been 15 years now. So I'm still, I probably felt in the last 2 years I've got my feet under me.
Well, so let's stop right there. You go into having successful career in coaching, and is this personal development? Is this business? Just kind of like some of that background in what you were very successful in. What was that?
I was in the ministry. I was a Christian pastor. I planted 300 odd churches in Australia. I traveled the world speaking in churches, running leadership conferences, and I funded all that through my businesses.
Wow.
So I, I had a very successful CEO training program for young CEOs, corporate training program, and did a lot of leadership training and development of other people.
So, as a devout Christian or follower of Christ, were you angry with God after that discovery?
No, he was uh, he was my greatest companion through it all, and I would not have made it without my faith. Um, and I've never prayed, "Why me?" I've only ever asked that He would turn all things for good. And I don't. Look, He's not responsible for what they did for me. They were responsible. He's responsible for getting me through it, and for me coming out of it sane. Because most people with the level of abuse I had, like the life expectancy was my first diagnosis by a therapist put me with borderline personality disorder. And for men with borderline personality disorder, the average lifespan is 37 years. And when I had recall and worked out what was going on and why I'd had so many years of risky behavior, I was 45. So I was already ahead of the curve. And it was like, okay, all right.
You think of where that's where a lot of like the term narcissism comes from is a lot of these unhealed wounds.
I think that's a great question because I think narcissism is like any disorder, it's got roots in something. It's either something that we embrace or something we grow from. And I think someone who's so self absorbed with either the result of pain or inflicting pain, they become that very selfish person where everything has to evolve around them. I don't think that anybody who is in um, any sort of connection to self can live where everybody else in their life is the detriment, where their actions are so detrimental to everybody else. And the person I was married to at the time was very narcissistic, but they didn't present as such. They were very manipulative, very controlling. And it's only really been recently that I've come to terms with the fact that I was married to an abuser, because we've unpacked some of those things psychologically. And it was like, man, I think my marriage was probably as detrimental as my childhood to me. And I think my working relationships within the Christian church were as detrimental to me as my childhood. And so my abuse didn't stop when I had my abuse didn't stop at 16. It
Well,
started a
that's all
whole,
you knew.
it's all I knew.
It's
And
all
then
you knew. So then going into a relationship, that's all you knew.
I would attract that, and workspace, I would attract those people to me. And they got from me what they wanted. They got a man who was obviously they saw as gifted, who was prepared to work very hard for their acceptance and would do anything to the detriment of self in order to make them happy and pleased with me because I was still performing. I might not be having oral sex with a whole range of middle aged women, but I was in a church wanting to make sure that the senior pastor liked me, that I was accepted and loved. I was in a marriage where I would do anything to make sure that they were happy at my own hurt because obviously I'm not a good person because they're angry at me. Therefore, I must do everything to please them and make them happy.
So you're at a pivotal moment and you're now divorced. You have children
Yeah.
of your own, and you have this aha moment. Was it debilitating to kind of face those realizations? And when you did, how did you take that next step to work towards healing?
So I had recall, and I was still in this marriage for 2 years, and it just imploded. It was just a mess, and I couldn't because I was having I'd have waking visions of these orgies and sex. It was probably 5 years of continually seeing these things replay. I trained myself to only sleep 90 minutes at a time, so I didn't get. I'd have set an alarm, so I'd go off every 90 minutes, so I'd wake up because I didn't want to get stuck in sleep. Because if I got stuck in deep sleep, REM sleep, those nightmares would last for days and days. So my whole life was very disruptive. I'd get up, go to the gym, come back, sleep again, sleep in the afternoon. Just a very challenging stage, and it was very difficult because I was constantly crying and processing things, and I couldn't escape what was in my head. I didn't have the tools yet. I understand it was very detrimental to the person I was married to at the time, and very impactful on my children. Um, which anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
You said tools, you didn't have the tools. I think that's probably one thing. I mean, we definitely want to put out here in this podcast is when somebody has that realization, I've had moments like that in my life, and we lack a lot of tools and resources. I think there's no excuse to be able to seek those. And wherever you were, there was probably even less access to what there is nowadays.
Mm.
But when you're saying tools, what would you say has been the most powerful tool to being able to help you pivot and work through? I mean, it's a mental transition, an emotional transition. You have these neural pathways that have been carved out certain ways. It affects the way you are a father. It affects the way you're a husband. It affects how you show up. Like you said, you are a high performer, but what is that fueled behind? You talk about having anger.
Mm.
And I mean, we've been taught in society that emotions are to be suppressed. The old school mindset is you don't address them, or, you're a girl, or, it's so demeaning to acknowledge your emotions. But on the highest level of awareness, emotions are there to tell us what's going on and danger, or it's a mechanism in place. So the awareness of these emotions that you're starting to address, what is even the first tool you begin to explore to understand without having that shame or guilt? You kind of have to say, hey, this isn't about shame or guilt anymore. This is about being able to understand what's going on.
Um, I think it was a dream I had. I think my healing started with a dream, and that dream was that God was not my fairy godmother, but my heavenly Father, and He was not going to save me from this. And it was very clear. I mean, I wouldn't know if I'd call it the audible voice of God, but it was a very deep resonation within my soul. And it was the promise that if I would get up every day and occupy myself with getting well, then He would give me a tool for my toolbox. When I realized that my miracle was going to be was something that I had to actively get involved in, and I think the Christian church, does not have a good handle on mental health. And I even think most spiritual organizations don't have a handle of understanding mental health as a real thing. Trauma changes the brain's pathways, neuro pathways. You can't pray that out. You can't fast that out. You can't read that out. You've got to journey and allow those things to actually and deliberately recraft those pathways. So we're talking 15 years of very dedicated work, reading hundreds of books, hours of self reflection and meditation, which appears very selfish to a lot of people. But my desire to improve wasn't about me, it was about the negative impact I was having on everybody else as well as myself. And if I didn't take time to reflect, if I didn't take time to realize, why did you lose your shit? I gotta, and that's just not a 15-minute reflection of, I lost my shit. It's like, what the hell's going on, man? Like,
So did you take medications to aid in this? Was there any kind of like chemical support that or even do you recommend that when people are?
uh, um, I found that THC was very negative for me. It brought me incredible anxiety and paranoia. I know a lot of people like weed, they think it's very good, or a THC vape that thinks it's good for them. I don't know if that's the case. The cannabinoid structure seems to change that and actually enhance paranoia. Ayahuasca's been recommended, ecstasy has been recommended. There's studies that are saying that those things are, but every one of those can breed a level of dependence, and they actually, in an excess, can actually open up the doors to further inner demons or external demons, depending on how you view it. And I, I am not one to recommend that, but I understand everyone's got their path, and I understand that medication plays a thing, and that depression and anxiety and a lot of those things are at some level uh, a chemical imbalance. So, like uh, uh, Alzheimer's is a type 3 diabetes. Okay, so in Europe, they understand it's a type 3 diabetes, and they understand it's related with food. Now, in America, we're still comfortable with red food poisoning number 7. So, we're finally waking up to some of that. So, if I treat this as a chemical imbalance with another chemical, then I'm going to be dependent on something. But if I understand my body and my brain has got an innate, given, created gift to heal itself. Now, is a pill a lot quicker? It is, so it serves a purpose to maybe get me to a place. But ideally, I'm going to be able to find a way through naturally with meditation, self discipline, diet. So, for example, I was in Michigan. I was going up to preach in a church, very big. Like, this is a massive, we're talking tens of thousands of people are coming on this weekend to hear me talk. I preached in my 4 and 5s in the Outback and loved it just as much as I like an auditorium of 20,000. But there's nothing that gets you going like pumping an auditorium full of 20,000 people and making them high five and enjoy the prospect of life. So I'm flying in. It's late. I go to this hotel, very swank hotel, man. Like, they took care of me. I'm standing in. It's one of those old school 1970s, 80s where everything's shiny and round and brass. And it's got that interior, those internal atriums, which all smell like rotten, like vegetation, as they did like 20 years
Yeah.
after they made them. But it's all supposed to be very groovy and fancy and stuff. And I get there and I'm bang, pumping, going. Walk in, dining hall shut, not a problem. What do you got? Pick up some Cheetos, pick up a Snickers, pick up a Diet Coke because obviously that goes with it all. And I go up to my room. I'm sitting there and I'm throw this stuff back because it's the only food I've had for 6 hours, 8 hours. And 20 minutes later, I'm manic depressed, looking over the balcony, wanting to commit suicide. And I'm standing there going,
Wow.
and I went, and this was one of those incredible aha moments for me. I'm going, what the fuck just happened? I go from being so pumped at one of the great opportunities of my adult life, and now I'm looking down over this balcony, watching my tears, contemplating jumping. And I thought, and it was like, what happened in the last 20 minutes? Okay, what's in Cheetos? Okay, orange food coloring, sugar.
You recalled it back to your food.
Yeah, and I just, because it was literally the only thing that happened. I walked in, had a pee, drank some food, and started getting melancholy and massive. I mean, the swing was so hard and fast. I caught myself. It's like, hang on, this wasn't a slow decline with snacks over an evening. And then I started to think about that. And then I started to watch every time I had particular red food colorings, orange food colorings, introduced too much sugar. Okay, what does sugar do? So now I find out about sugar causing anxiety, depression. Okay, so now I'm starting to and that was that's 8 or 9 years ago where I started to understand that food had an impact on mental health. Then it's like what music has an impact on mental health. What color clothes am I wearing? Here I am talking with you about aspects of my life that at 62 I find very difficult. So I made sure to connect with my wife in the morning, have coffee with her, get in, have a shower, comb my hair, comb my beard, instead of wanting to crawl into a fetal position because I'm going to talk about this shit that I hate. It's like, man, you got to get your game on, brother. Come on,
Let's
man up.
go. Let's
Let's
do
get it on. Let's dress for
it.
success. You know,
Yeah.
hide that shit behind the shield. And
So
but
you're
it's part
looking
of
over this
preparing for it.
ridge and you're looking over this ridge to jump. You recall that you trace it back to your food,
Yeah,
and what pulled you out of that moment and got you to pivot?
just realizing that that was the cause of it. That it wasn't internal. It was an external chemical thing. So bringing that back to the other substances I have, and your question on medication, I found that my best medication was my food, was a regular routine, and all of this has been proved out recently in the last couple of years. Food, regular routine, physical exercise, um, increasing water intake, and at the time I'd started bodybuilding. So here I was getting very nuanced down to grams and micrograms of what my food, and I would notice with my eating because there was nothing in me. Like I was on fish and broccoli for 6 months, so there was nothing in me. I'm down to 5 to 7% body fat, going into the master's class for bodybuilding, and you introduce a handful of Skittles or peanut M&Ms in that, and your emotional state is having huge swings, and it impacts your body. So it's literally like a test tube experiment inside my own head. I'm watching these chemical things take place, and I'm going, dude, this is surreal. And I do it for fun sometimes. Hey, want to get depressed? Take some red M&Ms.
You know what's interesting about what you said is, and I've experienced that too. I thought I was the only one. The cleaner my diet was, the more aware, solid I noticed. And the marriage I was in at the time, my partner didn't understand that if I didn't eat clean, how much it affected me emotionally. He would call me crazy.
Yeah.
And so I had this belief that I was crazy because I thought the food, it must be me, it must not be the food.
In fact, it is the food, and it affects the me.
It does. It does. Um, Going on this journey, you're now realizing it's food. You're now looking back at things that happened to you that have affected positive impact as well as the things that are holding you back internally to be just naturally happy. Um, you're now at a time in your life where you're preaching. What have you set up? Let's talk about what you've been able to set up to be able to invite others to join the healing. Because here's what I've seen: when you, like you talked about, the shame, the guilt, people are afraid to acknowledge that. It's almost like this fear that they're not enough, this, they're like on the edge of that cliff looking over, getting ready to make the jump into something greater mentally and spiritually, but they hold back. And what you, I'm sure, had that pivotal moment. So how do you create this space to invite these people to come and heal in this group?
I, I learned very early on that the only way I could do life with Melissa, my wife, who's saved my life on a couple of occasions, literally, with her was to be very authentic and very honest and talk about what I was coping with. If I smell the wrong incense, it reminds me of things that happened to me as a child. And we were going down the road one day and we're walking and we walked past a shop and I lost my shit. Like I walked in and I was a bawling mess. And so I'm having recall of these events. And I had to make a decision. It was very early on in our relationship whether or not I would bring her into that. And I found that the more I brought her in, the more she actually loved me for it, the wholer I got. And I found that this reciprocity was an incredibly powerful thing. I've now come to realize that it's authenticity, is the more honest I am with myself and those that are important to me, and that denotes a whole level of relationship. If we connected around authenticity, because I think I was just knew I was there in a spot and you were too, and the people I connect to when I'm authentic are the people that I can just be who I am, and being who I am is naturally okay. I don't have to be guarded. I can just be who I am. And the environment I want to create is that space. And that's what the aim of with the Phoenix Collective is. And that's what I think my whole aim is with everything, is to create an authentic space. We've misused the term safe word to mean it's a place without conflict. I actually believe a safe place is a place where you have conflict, but the conflict is not narcissistic or detrimental. It's the conflict that happens as iron sharpens iron. And it's this conflict that you have because comfort and conflict go hand in hand. comfort comes after conflict. Conflict comes after a place of comfort. And if you're not in a place where you can have those things, the only way we grow is to confront those things at who we are. And the only way we really confront those things with who we are is when we're in relationship. So the aim of the Phoenix Collective is to try and duplicate what I've had with Melissa, is a place where I can talk about the things that are important, good or bad, and have someone who's going to rub me and challenge me, in a very right way with my best interest involved. So she challenges me because she wants the best in me. And I know she believes in me, so I can trust her. Now, for me to say that I trust her is, for me, probably the biggest statement I make in my life. I told you about where I came from and who my abusers were. I've never been someone to say that all women are bitches and they're just blah. But I've heard that from women because they've had that experience with men. But not all men are bad. Not all women are bad. What I've done is found someone that I can trust. So the aim with the collective is to build that place. Okay, let's just do this together because who wants to fucking well stay stuck? Let's unstuck each other.
How do they come and join the collective group?
If they go to www.phoenixcollective.app, there's a form there, and it's a process. It's a conversation we have. Fill out the form, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about, are you at a space where you want to change? Because I'm going to take 15 years of knowledge and experience. I'm going to try and shorten your curve, because no one should have to spend, close to $200,000 to get well if there's another way to do it, and no one should have to spend 15 years in order to do it.
So in this app, what's provided? Do you do coaching? Do you have coaches in there? Is it more just one-on-one group? Like what is the
Sure.
pillars of what's in the group?
Thank you for asking. So the first thing is a foundation series, and it's a 6-week teaching. You'll be given a book to deal with, the book I wrote, my memoir, and where I talk very practically about how to overcome these things. So every day you'll get a video, 2 to 4 minutes, talking about, hey, this is a task for the day, and here's your homework. So every day builds on each other. Then we have a conversation at the end of the week, and you do that for a 6-week period. In the midst of that, you'll be meeting with a facilitator at least 2 times a month for a chat about a success call. Okay, how are you going? What do you need? Then on top of that, there'll be, for the guys, there's going to be second Saturday men's stuff, and there's going to be stuff for women as well. Because the reality is there's some things that need to unpack sexually. If part of your abuse has been sexual, then you're going to have to talk through some things. But even if it hasn't been, see, this is a thing. Like, I look at PTSD, and most of my PTSD guys are very high level performing veterans and police, and they've got horrible abuse as young people. That's why they went on to "You'll Never Fuck with Me and Mine Again" sort of
It's a
situation.
control. Like if I can't
Yes,
control my circumstances, I'm going to control everything within me.
yeah, it is. And again, in the church, unfortunately, I don't think we've done a good job of um, having conversations around sexuality outside of the extremes. Like, the majority of people are sitting in the middle here. Let's just talk about the middle. And the extremes love them; they can all work it out. But in here, we're not having those conversations. That if you go through horrendous abuse, manipulation, narcissism, whatever, it's going to twist your God-given this sexual desire, which is a very incredible gift. It's a great, phenomenal healing gift. And if we can't unpack that positively, then it's going to affect every other area of our life. So there's going to be some times where we need to talk about some of those things. And there's different levels. There's about 160 videos that help people. There's a community where people can talk with each other around topics. And if they want more personalized coaching, that's available as well.
You know what's interesting is, I mean, no judgment. People, to each their own. In your experience and incredible knowledge, people that become sexually explorative, whatever that looks like, monogamous, polyamory, whatever it is, do you feel, is that come from dealing with, or not have dealing with healing traumas as a child, that it now becomes an outlet in some sexual way?
Without a doubt. And if people will be honest with themselves, even homosexual, heterosexual relationships, there are a lot of core things in behaviors that happen because of abuse as a child. I was talking with a lady just recently that she was transitioned from male to female at 7 or 8, or was 12 to 13, and now here she is, like 10 years on, coming out of it, but there's nowhere for her to untransition. And she's in this thing of a major lawsuit at the moment because she was never given an opportunity to counsel around the fact that she was badly sexually abused. He was badly sexually abused as a young boy. And he's come to understand that because of that abuse, what they did is they just went into the gender reassignment saying, yeah, it's just like the homosexual stuff. That's just your predisposition. Just go with it.
There
And
was no
now,
counseling.
nothing.
Wow.
Well, now there's 15 minutes of counseling. Back then, there were hours of counseling. But even in those counseling, it continually affirmed an area of brokenness as opposed to exposing it. So, in a sense, there's no real choice. There's no conscious acknowledgement and understanding of what's going on. And I think it's very important when we understand that sex is such an important and integral part of our psyche as human beings. It's that thing God created man and gave him a woman. And they were butt naked and they got after it. So from day one, this thing's on. It's part of our created identity. So then we get up in here and we're wrapping it all up in, saran
Right.
wrap and trying to put it in little buckets and say this isn't part of our core identity. Bro, if we're not getting it on at home, you ain't getting it on when you go in public. Or you're pretending out there and then you're taking it home and it's a desert. It's going to break. And I don't know how we got into talking about that again,
You
but
know,
it,
it sounds like in your group, so you go to phoenixcollective dot app
app. Yep.
and fill out the form.
Mhm.
I mean, just having the conversation with you open about anything sexually in it feels like a really easy thing to do. I myself was sexually abused as a child, not in the way that you were, but I'm hearing some of those same things that you talk about to resonate very deeply with me. And it's allowed me to reconcile in my mind, wow, like we all go through similar steps of awareness, how it shaped us, how do we heal from it, how things affect us. And at first, when I started talking about it, I felt so like something was wrong with me, even
Dirty.
with my partner. You know, now I couldn't even tell him what happened. It stopped me from even speaking about it. So being able to hear you even speak about that, your experience, I think you said it perfectly. Being able to be authentic and to acknowledge and just to be in that space of like how you're working through it, there's so much healing and empowerment in that
Well, thank you.
for your for coming from you to me. And I this group, I couldn't be more excited to learn more and to be participating and to join and to push this out. I
Thank
believe
you.
it's so needed, especially with the male figure. I think the male figure, um, there's more males abused than we realize.
Yep.
Um, a lot more influencers are talking about it. I think Lewis Howes was one of them who talked about his sexual abuse in his podcast. And just being able to acknowledge this, you watch these people evolve just in their being as they become so much more aware. Their face, their body, their countenance, everything just becomes so much more lighter because they unload
Yeah.
this toxicity that they've held on to because they didn't know how to get rid of it before. So you being able to provide these tools, create a safe community, this is a pretty big deal.
Well, thank you. You like the chapter in the book where I did a survey of 175 people about sex. I think it'll be pretty insightful. I think you'll enjoy it. Like it's a naughty read that you hide from people when they come back.
You know, I'm going to be the first to admit, and this actually took me a really long time to come to reconcile, is because of my sexual trauma. And when I went into being my first marriage,
Uh-huh.
you know, it played a part in me wanting to be intimate. I didn't
Yes.
know my body was shutting down and he was trying to, you know, be expressive with me. And here I am thinking it's him. And so you have two people trying to connect, but they don't understand why. And here I am shut down unconsciously, not realizing it.
Yeah.
But the choice I did make is once I recognized it, It was very early on, and I did start going to therapy.
Yeah.
But then therapy is all talking. You're just talking and repeating the story. And then my next aha moment was, I'm just repeating the same story. This isn't helping me. And so then it was like, I think people think that self development, spirituality is this woo woo thing.
Yeah.
But in reality, being able to understand the energy of the story and how to talk about it
Yeah.
and use it to your healing is the most incredibly powerful thing ever. And now I can actually say I played a part
It's
in
good.
that relationship not working out and owning that. Where before I was like, it's all him. It's 100% his fault.
It's always a good therapy session when you want to go home and have a shag instead of go home and be embarrassed about shagging.
Right.
And so, and Melissa taught me this very early on. She said, we were talking about a range of things, and she taught me that sex was communication. And she said, because, I was hypersexual, hypersexual. And and she said, and she's naughty. You need to get her on sometime. She's naughty. She looks at me and she goes, sex is a conversation. And
It
she said,
really
how many
is.
times today would you like to talk? And I was like, okay, okay, let's have a quick yarn and then a longer yarn later on. She goes, sure, let's have it. And that normalized the thing. And it gave us, and we developed these series of language cues around things that just made it fun, us, intimate, our own, and normalized. I was no longer hypersexual. I was just someone wanting to talk a lot.
Oh,
And
I think that's a great way to reframe it because it takes this shame and guilt. And
yeah,
as a mother, are you, what are you, boys or girls?
uh, I got an eldest daughter, then a son, then another daughter, and then we lost Jackie. Melissa and I lost Jackie. We're not able to have kids. So he would be 12,
He'd be
and he would
12.
look like his mother, and he'd be beautiful.
Oh, so you understand being able to be comfortable in these conversations yourself with your partner, you now have to be comfortable having these conversations. So I've evolved into this kind of mom with my boys that's like, I talk about it, but I do it in a fun way.
Yeah.
Hey, you're going to like these things, but here's the consequences, and you should
Yes.
know about it
Yeah.
instead of suppressing and saying that's a no no, which was a very religious
Yeah.
suppression for me growing up. We didn't talk about it. I had no awareness till I was 22.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're talking about it. I love that your group's all about this. How many people collectively are in this group and how often do you meet? Kind
Yeah.
of give us like the schedule of what that looks like.
Well, we're launching this. So what I've got is I think probably 6 or 8 people at the moment that are our foundational members, and we want to invite as many as it can to be part of this and help us form this group because anything that's sustainable has to be meeting needs, and you don't know how to meet those needs if you don't know what those needs are. So the people that are the foundational members are getting on. They're getting an incredible opportunity. They're getting more than I know we're going to be able to give when there's 1,000 people in the thing. So they're getting a lot more connection, a lot more opportunity, and they're getting a chance to shape it. So we can scale to as many people have got cell phones and apps. We can be there for them, and
And
we've
how
set it
often
up
are
so
you
that,
meeting?
well, every day there's going to be something on the app for them.
Okay.
Then once a week we're talking as a group, doing a group call, and
Okay.
then on top of that, there's opportunities to have every couple of weeks another success call. So they're getting more connection and opportunity through this with each other and with Melissa and I and our other facilitators. There's 2 other facilitators. Than they will be in any therapy session.
That's amazing. All right. So, what's going to make these tools that you're providing different than anything else out there?
I think therapists try and do a good job, but if you haven't been anally raped with a plastic soldier because you didn't clean up your room at the age of 6, maybe you can't speak to my situation.
Mm.
So, and I think that's the reality of it. And it doesn't matter. Look, I've got guys who are some of the top pipe hitters in the world militarily, and they'll look at me and say, I don't want your fucking story. And I'll go, I don't want your fucking story. So let's not compare notes, or traumas. Let's talk about the commonalities of how we get well. So I don't think it matters what the trauma is that got us to here. Our past will either define us or refine us. My aim with this group is not to celebrate the past, but look at the possibility for the future. So, however anyone gets to the Phoenix Collective, My aim is to give them 15 years of knowledge, insight, personal walk, so they can walk on and be better than me, help more people than me, connect with more people than I could possibly connect with. And I want to try and make a difference. Our nation's, our world has a mental health crisis, and I want to do a part to do something about that.
So is this you're it's not just, let's clarify, it's not just for sexually abused people,
No,
but anybody who wants to improve, work on their trauma, have tools, and really, as you said, these neural pathways literally that have to be retrained. You get to
yep.
do this through a lot of support.
Yes, and I think that's part of the challenge. When you isolate a trauma, be it because you're a war fighter or be it because you've been trafficked as a kid, you're isolating, and there's such strength. It's one of the most beautiful things you would have ever seen, Bonnie, when there has been a big, hard ass man who's been trained to protect all his life, and a very vulnerable individual who's been defied all their life. You get those two people together, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful mess. And everyone gets whole. Someone, warfighter, I get to protect someone. Vulnerable human being, male or female, I've got someone protecting me. It's just, it's what we're designed to be and how we're designed to live.
Mm. I'm so thankful we got to meet. I'm excited to push this content out to people, to
Thank you.
invite them
Yeah.
to know that there's hope, to create more awareness from a physical level, an emotional, mental, spiritual. It's all encompassing.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.